Now this time we get to hear from the great deacon, Tuwakia Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Mankind has chosen a way that brings death and destruction, the way of Cain, continual fighting and war. And what has it brought them in these last days? Well, it's brought them suffering, misery, and things like this. Well, as we know, because we've been taught by the greatest teacher in the world, that one day there will be nuclear wars. And after the nuclear wars, there will be a thing called nuclear winter. And this has been told to us many times from the great Kahans and many other times. But today I'm going to talk about nuclear winter in specific and what will occur and what it is. This is from the Encyclopedia of Earth. It says, nuclear winter is a term that describes the climatic effects of nuclear war. In the 1980s, work conducted jointly by Western and Soviet scientists showed that for a full-scale nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union, the climatic consequences and indirect effects of the collapse of society would be so severe that the ensuing nuclear winter would produce famines for billions of people far from the target zone. So you can be halfway around the world and you'll still receive some of the consequences from what they've done, from the nuclear bombs, from the fallout and things like this. And, I hope, if time permits, I'm going to get into how nuclear winter works. Now, as we've been taught, if you have your book of Yahweh, if you can turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 28. And this has been, our great overseer has read this to us several times. Deuteronomy chapter 28, it's on page 170. Deuteronomy 28 on page 170. Starting in verse 21, it says, Yahweh will make the plagues cling to you. As we know, mankind has brought these things upon themselves, until he has destroyed you from the land you are entering to possess. Yahweh will strike you. They brought these things upon yourself. As we read this, remember, they brought these things upon themselves. With consumption, with fever, with inflammation, with scorching heat, and with the sword, with blasting and with mildew. They will stay with you until you perish. Verse 23, and the heaven that is over your head shall be brass, and the earth under you shall be iron. Verse 24 as well, Yahweh shall make the rain of your land powder and dust. From heaven it shall come down upon you until you are destroyed. And we've been taught this since the beginning, pretty much, about what this is actually speaking of. In the book, Let the Little Children Also Come to Me, it has a whole section about this. On page 167, it says, within the meaning of the words Moshe used, we can see that Moshe described perfectly the effects of nuclear warfare. Then it goes into detail about what each and every one of these words means. Each and every one of these words meaning. The word blasting means to scorch from blasting. This blast is an explosion. The blast of a nuclear bomb today leaves a powder-like dust in the atmosphere that slowly and destructively descends upon man. And this is known as nuclear fallout, which carries debris, radioactive material, and things like this. Then the word brass means the red color of the throat of a serpent. The word iron means to pierce holes. The word dust means dust as powdered of gray to pulverize. Then Pastor goes into detail about what this is actually saying. He says, when the nuclear explosion of a bomb hits the land, piercing holes into the earth, the detonation will shred apart soil, turning it into radioactive particles, as shown in the word powder, gray in color. This powder and dust is the radioactive fallout from a nuclear blast which will descend from heaven upon mankind, contaminating the entire earth. So because the nuclear bombs, they go up, it draws all of the debris, the radioactive material up, goes up into the atmosphere and goes around. And we saw this take place whenever the spread of mad cow disease, where they burned the cows and then the prions went up into the atmosphere and they're carried around the earth. And now all over the earth is where we see these things. Now, going back to this article about the nuclear winter, it goes on to say about new science that they have today. A minor nuclear war such as between India and Pakistan or somewhere in the Middle East, with each country using 50 Hiroshima-sized atom bombs as airbursts on urban areas, could produce climate change unprecedented in recorded human history. Now let me just show you how big, or I should say small, the Hiroshima bomb is compared to what they have today. If you can see this right here, you see these 3 bombs. Well, that's the Mike, which was the first hydrogen bomb. Then you have the Bravo, then the Tsar bomb, which is a 50 megaton bomb. And that's what they have, or that's what the Russians, the Tsar bomb was a Russian bomb. But if you look right here, you have smaller bombs. Well, they actually had to magnify it. And those are the Trinity, the Hiroshima, and then way down here is the bunker busters. The Trinity, yes, was a 20 kiloton. The bunker busters that we have today are on the 1 kiloton level. So you can see how small that was compared to what they have today. They have much bigger bombs today. And this is only using 50 Hiroshima-sized bombs. Okay, notice what percentage this is of the nuclear arsenal they have today. 0.03%. 0.03% of the explosive power of the current global arsenal. So it's a very small percentage. This same scenario would produce a global ozone depletion because the heating of the stratosphere would enhance the chemical reactions to destroy the ozone. A nuclear war between the United States and Russia today could produce nuclear winters with temperatures plunging below zero in the summer and major agricultural regions threatening the food supply for most of the planet. So we can see that we know some of the major agricultural regions, Texas, southern Texas, California. In those areas where it normally stays warmer, it can plunge below 32 degrees. So we can see how the effects of this nuclear winter can affect the food supply as well. And really quickly, before I end, I have another article. This is from nucleardarkness.org, War Consequences. This is a summary of the consequences between a U.S. and Russia producing 150 million tons of smoke from a nuclear war. It says 2,600 U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear weapons on high alert are launched in 2 to 3 minutes. In 2 to 3 minutes, 2,600 of these strategic nuclear weapons can be launched at targets in Europe, the United States, Europe, and Russia. Now, if you skip down to the bottom of this article, it says, unable to grow food, most humans would starve to death. And then the last point is, even humans living in shelters equipped with many years' worth of food, water, energy, and medical supplies would probably not survive in the hostile post-war environment. But remember, we always have a protection here at the House of Yahweh. If you can turn over to Psalms 91 really quickly before I close. Psalms chapter 91. So on page 470, it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty, which is Yahweh. And then if we look over to page 471, verse 5, you will not be afraid of the terror of night, nor of the arrow that flies by the day, nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor of the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 will fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right side, but it will not come near you. If you follow his laws, if you have his protection, the only way you can receive that is by keeping his laws. So remember that, brethren. We have to do the things, keeping Yahweh's laws, that will give us this protection from Yahweh. So with that, if you all please stand. I have the great honor and privilege to turn it over to the great Khan Benjamin Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Wow, it is an exciting time in the house of Yahweh, and about to get even more exciting. Does everybody remember By the way, the title of my sermon is called The Golden Anniversary. The Golden Anniversary. Now this week, actually it's ending today, there was an anniversary. Y'all remember? The 777. Y'all remember Pastor's first vision, the gold flake vision, right? Everybody remembers. On 7707 when he had that vision. And behind me you see the gold flakes, represented the gold flakes that Pastor saw falling. Now it's been 7 years since Pastor had that vision. And now you don't think that Yahweh was going to let this go by without really putting some emphasis on that, right? Well, I got a lot to go through. This past week, the past first day is when it started out. Down at the Blue School, in the school, a bunch of witnesses saw this following picture that I want to show you. In the sky, Yahshua sending messages. Now, you can't really make that word out too clear, but you can see a lot of the letters. It says death. D-E-A-T-H. Okay, now that word was seen in the southern sky in the exact position that the gold cloud was seen in on 3/31/13, if you all remember that, at the Feast of Passover last year. The word death was seen in the sky. Now this was on 7, it should be written up here. Let me see if I can get this right. Yeah, 7/6/14. This was this past first day. And there we emphasized it a little bit for you so you can see it a little better. Let me go back and show you again. Y'all can see that? Okay. Now we watched this for a little while. I pulled witnesses outside and we all looked at it. And something started to take place with that word, death. What started to take place was a line started to form through the word death, like it was crossing it out. Okay? Let me show you the next picture to kind of emphasize it. You can see the emphasis where the line is. Let me go back to this picture and try to blow it up a little bit. But as you can see now, there's a line running through the word death. And that's very significant. Now remember, this was on 7/6/14, this past first day. This was seen right here on the grounds in the exact position that gold cloud was seen on 3/31/13. Now, y'all remember this book, this latest issue, or latest 13th book of Israel. I'm always the one that has a problem with this thing. Everybody else does really well. But the purple book, Gold, Pure Fine Gold, the 13th book, part 2. Okay? Remember the first sermon in this book, if you all remember, we've gone over this many times. The very first sermon in this book is dated 7/6/13. 7/6/13. Now exactly 1 year later, on 7/6/14, that word death was seen in the sky, and then after a little while, the word was crossed out. 7/6/14. Now, the second thing that occurred on 7/6/14, because Yahweh always sends things in pairs. This is from the Richmond Times in Richmond, Virginia. It's a news article that was sent by a very faithful, diligent prisoner in Virginia Department of Corrections. I'm not going to name his name right now. But he sent this, and he wrote on there, Richmond Times Dispatch, that's the name of the paper, Sunday, July 6th. You can see that off to the left, okay? He had to cut out the top because of the fact he was trying to just send the article. But he sent a picture here that they ran in that paper, that Sunday paper, of this nebula. And this nebula is called ARP, not to be confused with the old folks thing, AARP, ARP 147. It's called ARP 147. And what you're seeing there is you're seeing two galaxies converging. Okay? And this picture was taken in September 2008 by the NASA Hubble program, Hubble wide-angle telescope that they use out there in space. Same one that we've seen these other images of from the nebulas. Now, this is from 7614, the Richmond Times. And this prisoner, I'm going to show you the letter. This letter was written, notice the date, he wrote it on 7/7/14. And he put the article in there from 7/6/14 of what he had seen. And here's what he said that he saw in this picture. He says, I see the witness clearly. Pastor is seen in this color photo. And he shows in that particular galaxy where Pastor's face is. And he says, praise Yahweh, signs in the space clouds, awesome, amazing. Okay, now this is a prisoner. He's never been to the House of Yahweh. He's been in prison for many, many years. But he's seeking to be here. And as the great Kahan said in his prayer, please pray for these prisoners. You know, Yahweh's using them in a big way. And they are doing the work of Yahweh and pushing the peaceful solution while they're in prison. The men in the Department of Corrections... The men in the Virginia Department of Corrections, they take the last few cents they have on their money account that they don't even really have. They don't even have families that are helping them, sending them money. But the little bit that they get, they take and they buy stamps and they mail peaceful solution brochures to their local congressmen and senators, and they push it from the prison walls. Remember, the prison doesn't bind the peaceful solution. It's going to get out, and the prisoners are doing a great job of doing it. And this very diligent prisoner sent this picture. Now, let me show you more clearly what in that nebula, what was seen. Can everybody see that okay? You'll see a face right there. Very familiar. Notice the glasses, okay? I'm going to show you in a cropped picture so you can see it more clearly. Can everybody see that? Everybody sees that. Now, let me go back to the big picture here. I want you to notice the colors of this nebula because they're very significant. There's also another color down here that we're going to talk about. By the way, here's an overlay of Pastor's face, so you can kind of make out where exactly it is, but I think everybody can see that pretty clear, right? Okay? Now, I want to show you what's actually being shown here in this picture. Let me zoom out. There's some very significant colors in this nebula. First of all, down here, there's a very faint, there it is. I think you can see it better now. You'll see a ruby color right there. And there's the ruby, so you can match it together. The ring in this galaxy is topaz colored. Remember ruby, remember Yeketska, turn over to Yeketska 28 again so we can refresh our minds on what these colors, remember these are stones that are in the high priest's breastplate. Yeketska 28, off to the side note there. Side note F, it talks about Exodus 28, 17 to 20, the 12 stones in the high priest's breastplate. The first one is ruby, and that one can be seen here. Okay? And ruby means to submit to Yahweh and those who are over you. The second one, topaz, which is this color here, means to be pure. To be pure. Okay? The next color now remember in the gold cloud, we saw ruby color and we saw topaz. We saw the word ruby and we saw the color topaz clouds off to the right of the gold. Remember Pastor being crowned by Yeshua and the gold colored cloud. We saw the topaz clouds. But we didn't see another one that we're seeing now. Now we're seeing the third stone on the high priest's breastplate, which is beryl. And beryl, if you notice in the side note, means to give light. To give light. Now that should ring a bell in your mind right now. If you'll turn over to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to read verse 14 through 17. It's found on page... now, come on. You guys should know where Genesis 1 is. I don't even know what page it is because my book is so marked up I can't see it. I assume it's page 1. Genesis 1:14 says, "And Yahweh said, Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark the feasts and for days and years." Verse 15, "And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, and it was so." Now, verse 16, "Yahweh made 2 great lights." Circle that word great. Great lights. "The greater to govern the day, and the lesser to govern the night. He also made the stars." Now, verse 17, I really want you to focus on this. "And Yahweh set them in the expanse of the sky to give light." To give light on the earth. Okay, now remember, the word beryl, the stone, represents to give light. Okay, now, but who are these 2 great lights? Who are these 2 great lights that Yahweh gave? Well, remember our work about the moon and the sun, and we showed how pastor represents the moon, which is the lesser light to govern the night, remember? And notice, Yahweh calls them great. We're going to get to that in just a second. Okay, now, let's see. Moving on here. Let's see. So 7-7-4. Okay, so this was all on 7-6-14, 1 year after 7-6-13. If you remember, Pastor gave that sermon on 7-6-13, and he mentioned NASA in the Hubble program. That's in the very first verse of that book, of that purple book. And lo and behold, 1 year later, NASA comes along again with another picture. Okay? Now, let's see. Oh, boy. Okay, so that was 7-6-14. 7-7-14, this prisoner wrote the letter and mailed it out. Now, another thing occurred on 7-7-14. I got a letter in the mail. I can't tell you who it was from. We got a letter in the mail from a very prominent Texan, known worldwide in regard to ethics and morals. And he said, "I am so impressed by what I've seen from..." Now, somebody spread this to him. Somebody came to him and told him about our work. And he's been writing books on morals and ethics for years. But he goes more around politics and religion, or not religion, but politics and culture and so on and so forth, and finances. But he saw our work and he was so impressed that he wrote a letter and said, "I would like to meet with you on 7/11, which was yesterday, in a certain town. I want to meet with you. Come to my office and let's see how we can work together." Now, I got to show you a meaning of some words here. Let's start with 7-6-14. That's when that nebula was seen, or the prisoner saw the nebula and we saw the word death. Notice what it means. It means 7. Well, what else would it mean, right? 7 or an oath. Remember, death has been wiped out for the house of Yahweh. Okay? Yahweh's going to keep his oath to take death away. And remember, the power over sin is the law. The power over sin is the law, and that's what's going to destroy death. But the law in itself can't do it. We have to have a great teacher to be able to do that, and Yahweh gave us one. His name is Pastor Israel Abel Hawkins. Now, 7-7-14 is when we got the letter from the gentleman wanting to meet with us. Very prominent, very well known worldwide. 7-7-14. I think I got the wrong one. Actually, he wanted to meet with us on 7/11. That was yesterday. Notice what the word is. Purple. Purple. Now, what would be the odds of this? I wonder what this means. Okay, so 7-7-14 was the 7th anniversary, and that's when we got this letter from this gentleman, this very prominent Texan. and it means royal. Royal. Remember the purple? Royal purple. 7-Eleven. Also means the great scribe. Now this nebula, remember it was ARP 147, so we looked up the numbers there, and there it is for you, number 147, and it's the word or the term threshing floor, and it's from 142. So we went to 142, and it means to be great. To be great, make glorious, be great, magnificent, become glorious, become honorable. Now, y'all should remember the scriptures here. Genesis 1:16 again. Go to 1:16. Yahweh made two great lights, the great lights. Remember Matthew 5:19? Whoever teaches and does these laws, the same will be called great in the kingdom of Yahweh. And turn over to Isaiah 43 real quick on that word honorable. Isaiah 43, speaking about the witness Israel. Isaiah 43, in verse 4, he says, speaking of Israel, verse 3, it's on page 557. For I am Yahweh your Father, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I gave Egypt for your ransom, Ethiopia and Seba for your price. Because you were precious in my sight, you have been honorable. And I have loved you. So I will give men for you and people for your life. Remember, death is being wiped out for the house of Yahweh. Are y'all excited about that? Are you excited that Yahweh is showing us that, remember, he who overcomes will not be hurt by the second death. Okay? Yahweh's showing us the year 2014. Remember the latest prophetic word? The question on the latest prophetic word, 2014. Is this the year for nuclear wars? Well, it seems to be a very special year. And Yahweh's showing us that completion again of that 7 years, that 7-year cycle. It's completed. And now, notice, there's a big emphasis now on purple. The gold, if you noticed, I need to show you one more thing before I get kicked off the stage. I won't get kicked off. I'll just evacuate. If you notice, pastor's face, what color is it? It's gold. It's gold. That's the only part in that whole galaxy that's that color. Pastor's face is gold. Okay? Pastor is gold, is he not? Pastor is a golden saint. Yahweh says he would come forth like gold, and he has. And he's bringing you forth, he's bringing us forth as gold. And remember, this is all a body. It's all, when you see pastor's face and these messages, these aren't just the pastor, it's to him and his sacrifice that he's brought here at Abel, okay? And everybody that's following our great overseer in the prisons and the other countries where they're being held back, you're part of this too. Get excited, because now we're going into the purple era. A lot more is going to be brought on it, but it's going to get really exciting now, and there's some really major players that are getting ready to back the peaceful solution. So buckle up, get ready, because it's coming, and they're coming, and you better be ready to teach them. With that, may Yahweh bless you. And I'd like to turn it over to the great Kahan Ilya Heiler.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Speaking of coming, we have some news for you today. Now, it's going to be right around 29 minutes, but pay very close attention. Keep in mind the quartet, those who are holding back the winds of war, and pay close attention to how it's starting to slip through their fingers. They're not able to hold these things back anymore. In fact, they're being caught up into it them very selves against each other. Listen very carefully when you hear Russia, the EU, the United Nations, or the United States mentioned as backers or supporters of these wars that are taking place. Pay attention to how quick things are changing. Just a few weeks ago, Ukraine seemed like it was on the hot topic, and then ISIS seemed like it was the top of the agenda, and almost overnight, now we have Israel and Palestine once again putting things on the edge, the very edge. Pay very close attention and watch how these decisions are being based on emotions. At this time, if we could go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Now, Katan, the nations are angry, and it seems like that anger is about to turn into rage. Wow. This week in the news, any hope for peace between Israel and Palestine has been pushed aside, and ISIS continues to expand its control and reign of terror. But first, let's look at the Ukraine situation, which is quickly becoming another example of continual war. President Petro Poroshenko decided not to extend the recent ceasefire. In an interview with RT, Martin McCauley, a commentator on Russian affairs, believes only a mutual deal between Kiev and anti-government fighters will bring peace to the region.
Mr. McCauley said the economy is in a very bad state. He needs peace at this time. He needs to resolve this problem. His task is to ensure peace, to negotiate an agreement, some type of deal whereby both sides, the anti-government forces and the Ukrainian army, cease offensive action so that peace can reign in that area. Then gradually this area can come back to a normal situation.
Now, Foreign Affairs analyst Nebojo Malik also commented on the president of Ukraine's decision not to extend the truce in eastern Ukraine. He said, "I think President Poroshenko's speech was a warmongering one. He essentially promised a war until the final liberation of eastern Ukraine. And he promised to hunt down all he called bandits and marauders." Now, there was also, he said, not a single conciliation note in it. It's very disappointing from the standpoint of reasonable people, but he said, I don't think for a second that the European Union wasn't expecting this. So they kind of knew already what the president was going to do. They were expecting it.
The EU in on that.
That's right. They were in on it.
Sounds like plans were made in advance. Ukraine's president did say that there still could be a ceasefire if anti-government activists follow his peace plan. Foreign Affairs analyst Nebojo Malik was asked if this really is a possibility at this point, and he said, not in the least. His proposal was not a peace plan. It was essentially a demand for unconditional surrender, offering zero guarantees to the people fighting for their self-determination that they would have any of their legitimate demands met by the government in Kiev. There's absolutely no chance for the rebels to take the so-called peace plan into advisement, let alone consideration.
Now, the United States State Department also chimed in on Ukraine's decision, saying whether to extend the ceasefire or not is a decision that Ukraine and only Ukraine will make, and we'd certainly support that decision. Whatever decision that they make. But it takes two to implement a ceasefire. There are steps that we've long been calling for, they said. There are steps that we've long been calling for that are a part of what President Poroshenko has been calling for that Russia has not done. Now, there's a great deal more that they need to do in order to de-escalate the situation, referring back to Russia.
And so the United States State Department is putting a little bit more of this blame on Russia itself.
That's right.
So we see that tit for tat between nations taking place here. I know there's a little tug of war going on between Russia and the United States. Well, as we continue on, at least 15 people were killed after a security checkpoint came under attack just north of Iraq's capital by the group called ISIS. Government forces have been trying to prevent them from gaining ground in the country and in neighboring Syria. As thousands of the militants' fighters are being recruited, Western countries in Europe and America are tightening security in fear the terror skills will be brought back home.
Now, a look at social media reveals that people from the West are more involved than you would imagine. A 20-year-old British national posted a photo of what seems to be 15 homemade bombs, accompanied by a tweet saying, "So the UK is afraid I'll come back with the skills I've gained." Now, the same man appears in a video with several others, calling on brothers in the West to join their cause.
Another ISIS fighter in this video reaches out saying, "All my brothers living in the West, I know how you feel in the heart. You feel depressed." Even women are being asked to join in. In April, a 19-year-old nurse was detained at Denver International Airport. She was allegedly on her way to Syria to marry an ISIS fighter. Her Facebook page has suggested that her profession was a slave to Allah.
Experts are saying that this latest recruitment in Western countries is unprecedented. German intelligence claimed that more than 2,000 Europeans have joined the jihad in Syria and Iraq, including at least 320 Germans. Now, American reporter Richard Engel, who was kidnapped and released, says up to 70 Americans are also involved. Now, with these fighters openly saying that they could bring their newly gained terror skills back home, Europe and the United States have reason to be on high alert.
Now, Sunni insurgents trying to catch the country's largest oil refinery prompted the Iraq government to launch several air raids against them. The group has also seized control of other lucrative oil fields across Iraq's border in Syria. The fear is that the oil reserves will allow more external support to flow into their hands.
Gerald Horn, a professor of history, said, "We should not rule out the possibility that these religious extremists can get this oil to the market and receive funding in return. ISIS is very well funded. They were able to loot a bank and apparently run away with tens of millions of dollars for this recent advance that they've made in Iraq."
Yes, from what we understand, that ISIS has been making in these attacks in banks and so forth, taking away hundreds of $millions in addition. You know, this was just one instance, and in fact, their entire network is worth over $2 billion at this time.
A lot,
so
man,
they've got the money to purchase their weapons and so forth and continue their offensives. Oil is not the only thing ISIS is going after. Iraq's ambassador has told the UN that the militant group has also seized nuclear materials from Mosul University. At least 40 kilograms of uranium compound were stored at the university. The materials obtained can be used in the manufacturing of weapons of mass destruction, and warned they could be smuggled out of Iraq, which, as we reported on before, they didn't find any materials that could be used for weapons of mass destruction back when the United States went to Iraq several years back, but I guess they missed something.
Well, in another region of the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian situation took a turn for the worse when an announcement was made from Israel that the 3 missing Israeli teenagers were found dead. Now, the boys' bodies were found under a pile of rocks in an open field. The 3 boys disappeared while hitchhiking home in the West Bank town of Hebron. All of this led to some extraordinary grief and outrage.
The abductions of the 3 boys prompted one of Israel's largest search and security operations in more than a decade, including help from the FBI. The Palestinian group Hamas was quickly blamed for the abductions, even though they denied it. 400 Palestinians were arrested.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that they were abducted and murdered in cold blood by human animals. Hamas is responsible and Hamas will pay, he said. Now, shortly after these statements, airstrikes were being reported in Gaza.
Seemed like a very great reason to go to war with your neighbor there. Now, as if the tensions between these parties weren't bad enough, a new video emerged showing masked Israeli police brutally beating a teenager in East Jerusalem. The attack was first shown on a Palestinian TV station. The 15-year-old boy was identified as a Palestinian American and was denied medical treatment since taken into custody. He and 5 other youths were attacked in a yard by 2 masked Israeli police.
Now, while funerals for the 3 teens were held the day after finding their bodies, tensions continued to run extremely high between Israel and Hamas, with more airstrikes in Gaza. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising that the teenagers' deaths will be avenged, that the people involved in their kidnapping/murder will bear the consequences.
Right. Following these events, Israel has also began calling for its reservists. Now, YPN's Larry McGee has our story on the emotional escalation occurring between the two sides and how retaliation is worsening the situation day after day. Larry, just how many reservist troops have the Israelis called up for this recent event?
Israel has sanctioned the call-up of 1,500 of its reserve troops at present, and as the cycle of retaliation continues to escalate tensions between the Israelis and Palestinians, analysts say there is just cause to be worried as the back and forth could spiral into an all-out war. And speaking on the conflict, editor at Time magazine and CNN host Fareed Zakaria commented this week that on both sides of the conflict, there is an internal compulsion which is pushing them towards a confrontation that maybe they don't rationally want. For Fareed, the present escalation is reminiscent of the events surrounding World War I, where no one rationally wanted a conflict, but nobody could find a way to control their emotions and back down. For that reason, it is difficult for some analysts to see how the present clash is going to stop, as both parties seem dead set on fighting fire with fire. In Gaza, 100 people have been injured, and as many as 11 people are reported to have been killed. Among them, according to the Gaza Ministry of Information, have also been women and children. For this, Hamas says they are prepared for a very long battle. Speaking from Beirut, Hamas spokesperson Osama Hamdan answering concerning the constant rocket fire being launched into Israel by Hamas and what it would take to stop it. Hamdan says Israel must stop its aggression. Israel started the fight and it must stop first. In the meantime, Gaza militants are reported to have up to 10,000 rockets at their disposal and have launched hundreds into Israel so far. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu commented that no country on earth would remain passive in the face of hundreds of rockets fired on its cities, and Israel is no exception. Israel's primary defense at this point against the rockets, which are being fired sometimes 40 at a time, is its Iron Dome defense system, to which U.S. taxpayers have contributed $900 million so far as a part of the $3 billion that the U.S. furnishes to Israel for its army. In addition to the defense of Iron Dome, Israel continues to push offensive measures as well, striking alleged rocket launch sites, production factories, and over 780 other targets, as the cycle of retaliation fueled by uncontrolled emotion continues. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, as we've seen already so far, continual war only brings more war, no peace. Continuing with the Israeli offensive, the reports continue saying that just over 100 rockets have come in from Gaza, and Israel is not letting up on its strikes on terror targets in the Gaza Strip. In fact, they're planning to ramp up their operation not just to stop the flow of rockets coming from Gaza, but to damage Hamas and its capabilities to send out more rockets. This so far is Israel's third day of Operation Protective Edge.
Now, dozens of militant rockets have been fired at Israel, some as far-reaching as 140 kilometers over Tel Aviv and beyond. Those rockets fired over civilian-populated areas were intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system. Even a wedding was interrupted as air raid sirens went off, sending the bride running for cover. Israel's President Shimon Peres said, if the rocket attacks continue, Israel may launch a ground invasion.
He continued by saying if they would stop, for example, tonight, there won't be any ground entrance. But if they continue, sooner or later, this will be the response. Israel said they will still continue to strike targets inside Gaza, trying to hit rocket launchers, weapon stashes, and command centers, which so far have been mostly homes that have occupied by Hamas, and they kind of mingle amongst the civilian population there. But they're doing this in order to cripple Hamas, Israel is, in their capacity to wage rocket terrorism. One of Hamas's political leaders, Khalid Mishal, said the Palestinian people will not give in. They will not surrender.
Now, so far, dozens of Palestinians have been killed, including 8 women and 11 children. Israel says that that is doing its best to try to minimize the casualties by using telephone messages and warning shots. Of course, this isn't the first time that Israel and Hamas have fought. Anthony Cordesman from the Center of Strategic and International Studies said, in times past, whatever Hamas lost, it gained back in terms of reputation, rebuilding leaders, and getting more outside support in terms of money and arms, and being able to tighten its control over Gaza. So they're saying even though they may lose in casualties, they're gaining back other ways. So
Right.
they don't consider it a loss.
Yes, the more you fight against them, the stronger they grow. So far in Israel, there has been no loss of life, while the Palestinians count that loss of life by the hour. Elsewhere in the region, Palestinians hurled rock at Israeli forces while Israel mobilized forces along the border for a possible ground invasion. This time, Israel's message to Hamas is clear. Neither your family or your children will shield you, as it targets the houses of those it believes are responsible for rocket fire. And of course, this becoming one of the defining aspects of the confrontation, this rocket fire continually coming from the Gaza Strip area. Now, this, of course, fueling the anger and the defiance that so often keeps this cycle of violence in motion.
Israel says that they are selective in their targets, and recently Israel's prime minister said those attacks will now be stepped up. In Gaza's main hospital, doctors say supplies are already running low, down to only 50% of what they need. This, of course, will impact the number of wounded patients that they are seeing for treatment. One man said, "We hope to stop this attack now, because if it goes on for days, things will be crucial."
Yeah, he's absolutely correct. Now, the M75 rocket that Hamas used in November 2012 to reach Tel Aviv not only had a monument built to honor it, Hamas says that in the last few days they have fired more of these M75 rockets, putting more population centers in Israel under threat.
Now, the president of the Palestinian Unity Government, Mahmoud Abbas, has accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. In a recent cabinet meeting, Abbas said of a family that was killed, "This family lost 7 and that family lost 7. The Israelis told them that their home would be demolished by rockets. Now, one was 6 years old," he continued, "one was 70, and all ages in between. They got killed with airstrikes and rockets so that everyone in this house could be demolished." So, what is this crime called? What would we call it legally? He who kills an entire family, isn't this genocide?
Now, that accusation came after Israel stepped up its offensive on the besieged Gaza Strip. Palestinian UN envoy and ambassadors representing Arab, Islamic, and non-aligned nations say they called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council against what they called Israel's outrageous onslaught against Palestinians, and they're calling for that to take place very soon.
Now, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights says Israel could be violating the laws of war by targeting Palestinian houses in the Gaza Strip. A UN spokesman has said that targeting the homes was a breach of human rights law unless the buildings were used for military purposes. She also said, in case there is any doubt, buildings that are used for ordinary civilian population can't be a legitimate target.
Well, Jeff, what we're seeing here in this latest broadcast is the nations are tit for tat at each other. The emotions are strung very high, and it seems like they are, as Yisrayl Hawkins has stated many times before, pointing out the prophecy, continually groping in the dark for answers, but they're not finding a solution. Only the House of Yahweh and Yisrayl Hawkins has the solution, the peaceful solution for all mankind's worries, their problems, and truly able to bring peace, but only if we take heed to the warning he is giving and make a change right now. This is what you can do.
Now, to contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. Now, you can email them at info@yahweh.com, and for any calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Now, don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Get your pencils and papers ready, because up next is Yisrayl Hawkins bringing the inspired message coming straight from Yahweh to all the world, the only light in the world in these last days. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for joining us.
At this time, I'd like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl Abel Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Wow. Where's my... Okay. Shalom. Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. You may be seated. And praise Yahweh for that praise to Him. I know He's very excited about His family right now. I can see that in Scripture, but I also see it in the heavens. I spent quite a bit of time trying to spot that. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I spent quite a bit of time yesterday trying to spot that picture in these galaxies, and never did. I never could. And somebody gave me a smaller picture a while ago, and I don't know if this makes a difference to you, but there it is. It's real easy seen in that one. Very easy seen. And the fact that a very loved prisoner wow. Praise Yahweh. The world, and seems like they can't think of anything but war and fighting. And while they talk peace, and of course it's getting worse. We know it's going to get worse, but we know also that this is that Yahweh offers His house a place of protection, and that's why Yeshua is showing us so many things, and He told us to look up because He was going to show us these things. 1900 years ago, He told us that. The things we see in the heavens right now, with my face in it, you know, that's of course to glorify man. That's what Yahweh says He's going to do with His house. The prophet Daniel wrote that you're going to shine like the stars of heaven. Remember that? He is talking about you. Daniel. The people led by the two witnesses. I looked down, and the last I saw was two others and one teaching. That's what he said. Well, of course, meaning the house of Yahweh, and just before that he said, you're going to shine like the stars of heaven. Glory that Yahweh is going to give you. I tell you what, let's start right there with Hebrews. Turn over to Hebrews 10, and we'll just read this. I've got about 30 minutes, and I think I can cover this. Our Sabbaths are getting fuller all the time, every week, so we're going to have to speed up. We're going to have to hurry. In Hebrews 10:24, he says, "Let us consider one another, how we may urge one another on to righteous works." Well, that's what Yahshua himself, as high priest over the house of Yahweh right now. That's what he's doing when he shows us these things in the heavens. You understand? He's doing it, but he wants us to do it too. He wants us to encourage one another. Don't let one another sin. You know, if you have to, take them hold the arm and shake them a little and say, listen, get your mind on the right track here. What you're bringing forth is not right. You know, you're going to knock yourself out of the kingdom, out of an office here. An office is just about to be given. It's right. We're on the last part. We're in the last part of the last generation. And we all should realize the urgency of this thing we're facing here. You know, when Yahweh created man, he created him for a reason. Well, of course, that was to give him authority. So he would shine as the stars of heaven because of his great knowledge and wisdom that Yahweh is giving him to guide the universe. And the universe is now waiting for the manifestations of the Son of Man. Son of Man. That's the kinfolks that was passed down to us. We're part of those kinfolks. There are kinfolks, the sons of men, and we're the last part. We're the finishing, of course, of this great priesthood that he promised to Abraham, that we'd be a blessing to all the universe. We are going to be that blessing by bringing forth the peaceful solution to all the universe. Yahshua and saints will shine like the stars of heaven with glory, great glory. And he says to be a part of this. Don't talk it down. You know, this man that the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins was telling about, that this prominent Texan, when I was talking to him yesterday on the phone, you know, he was actually trying to push me into getting him involved. Of course, he doesn't have to push me to get him involved. I'm going to use the man to full extent, but he's wanting to get us the peaceful solution into many different countries, and this man is capable of doing it. You know, he's a very intelligent man, a pleasure to talk to. I could have went on talking to him for hours, I do believe, and not got bored with it. But of course, I didn't have time, so I had to take other appointments. But anyway, he's going to be a great asset. But that's just one of thousands that you could see in this great work. I'll get to that later. But we got people that are taking the newspaper articles and actually putting them on their own websites. Thousands of them. Yes. How does that multiply the 120,000 newspapers? You know, and here these people are taking them and putting them on their own websites, and of course sending it to everyone they know. And this is going to increase. Yahweh is now lifting you up, is what he's doing. A neighbor told one of our people, I don't know why those people ever came against y'all so harshly. You know, I've known you people ever since you've been here, and I've never seen nothing but righteous behavior out of all of you. That was a statement that was made by one of the neighbors here. Anyway, and back to Hebrews here, 10:24. This is Yahshua doing this. He says, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, not forsaking the gathering of ourselves together. Don't forsake this. Yes, you'll die if you do. You know, every time you miss an appointment with Yahweh, you miss out on a wonderful blessing that you would be using later in the kingdom if you were here, or if you get there. This should be the most important thing in your life. When Yahweh created man, praise Yahweh, he went the wrong way, of course. And Yahweh said, you know, go and I'll tell you what you're going to find. And of course he said it's going to be continual war. Have you seen anything except continual war? You haven't seen any peace. They all talk about it. The Pope prayed for it. You know, he went to the rock wall. He said it's like praying to a brick wall. Yeah, the Lord is not answering for some reason. Well, he says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. I have a job for you. I want to train you for my kingdom. Now that was the number one goal, Yahweh's number one goal for mankind, to train you for his kingdom. Now, your ancestors forsook that and went after making money and power and slaves out of everyone they could capture. And of course, they got captured themselves in doing so. So what went around came around. And of course, that's what they were preaching. You know, we want kings to fight our battles for us. And the battles kept coming and coming and still coming. And no one is winning. Have you seen any winners in this mess that we're seeing? Now, there's some plans being made, and we saw them coming into action, about China and Russia and three other countries, one of them being Brazil. Yeah, Brazil, our next door neighbors here. and of course, they have teamed up together, as I have said that they would. And they're coming against the taxation of the dollar. Yes, they're being taxed too. America is taxing these foreign countries, all of them. They can't live without it. They can't do without it. But they're trying to break the tie. They don't like it. Anytime you disobey Yahweh and you don't bring forth a peaceful solution, this peaceful solution that he offers you, you will have trouble. Now that's what Yahweh is training you for now, to teach this peaceful solution. Yes, the teachers are going to shine as the stars of heaven. That's what he's bringing you forth for, to teach the peaceful solution, not the fighting of wars, but the peaceful solution. Therefore, don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together, as the manner of some already is, leaving the house of Yahweh. And he says, so much the more as you see this prophesied day of destruction coming. For if we sin willfully, notice it's a sin to not gather here on the Sabbath day. You're forsaking the gathering of yourselves together on the Sabbath day? Yes, it's a sin. It's breaking the fourth commandment. Not only that, you miss out on learning the peaceful solution, and you learn and the horrors that this world is bringing forth, because they stopped keeping the Sabbath, because they started breaking their appointments with Yahweh. He said to Cain, he had to go hunting Cain. He had to go hunting Adam and Eve, so he could train them for his kingdom, the most rewarding thing man could ever look for. It's offered to all mankind, and they wouldn't come to the house to get it. No, they went off. You know, you only allotted a short length of time. And if you waste that time gathering gold and silver, I can guarantee you're going to be casting it in the street one of these days, hating the fact that you did not enter the house to get the peaceful solution. Anyway, For if we sin willfully, yes, it's a sin to miss a Sabbath day. He says, if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains the sacrifice for sins. This is Yeshua doing this talking here. You want to know who wrote this book of Hebrews? Did you know? I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something right now that no one else knows but you. Yeshua himself wrote the book of Hebrews. No, it wasn't the Apostle Shaul. No. Yeshua himself penned this book. It's a great secret, isn't it? But it shows in the book itself who wrote it. For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sin, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment, which you see in Revelations 20, Yeshua also showing that one to you, and fury, indignation, which will devour the adversary. As Malachi said, leaving them neither root nor branch. I need about 10 sermons on that one right there. Look at 25 through 27, we got that. Important. Russia, China sign deal to bypass U.S. dollar. Yes, that's what it's all about. Hurt not the oil, hurt not our lifestyle. Now, in this same article, I won't read it until next week to you, but Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, you know why the trouble's in South Africa now? Now you know why there's so much trouble in South Africa. Well, the Pope is praying for peace, so we can go back and relax. The California catastrophic drought just got worse. A lot worse. This is the article. How bad is the California devastating drought? Just in the past week, the percentage of the state identified as being in exceptional drought, the most severe category, it even jumped past that, from 1/4 to 1/3%. The government-funded United States Drought Monitor classified the entire state as in drought, and as of Tuesday, nearly 77% of California was in extreme drought. Before the turn for the worse this week, the situation in the Golden State, in the Golden State of California, as goes California, so goes the world. I wonder if they still want that, the rest of the states still want that. Well, there's 18 of them suffering now as the drought keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. Abelin put signs up praying for rain. Abelin churches gather to pray for rain. With Abelin's critical condition, it says, and lasting drought, every drop of rain counts through the big country. The rain that Abelin received last week helped, but it wasn't enough, so people from different churches throughout Abelin came together on June the 1st to pray for rain. The issue was strictly rain. Pastor met there with them. Different denominations came together, and he was thankful for that. The chief Standridge said the Lake Fort Phantom Hill was last full in July 2007. The pastor said rain is coming soon. He knows that the Lord will answer his prayers. Now, I wrote him a letter, and I said, why don't you ask the Lord for, say, 6 inches of rain without hail? The last time, they got $400 million in damage and a 1/2 inch of rain. $400 million in Abelin now. This is in Abelin. $400 million in damage in Abelin. So I said, why don't you ask the Lord for 6 inches or whatever inches you need, and tell him this and publish it. And then you will know whether the Lord is answering your prayer or not. I'll guarantee you, let's turn over to Isaiah 59. I'll guarantee you, Yahweh will not answer your prayer. Now, Yahweh gives rain on the just and the unjust alike, he says. But the heavens are so screwed up right now. The firmament. You've screwed them up till they won't produce like they're supposed to. I know you're thinking that, well, it's going to eventually rain. Surely it will. It always does. But what if it doesn't? What if the firmament is so fouled up now that it can't? What are you going to do then? Wait till the last minute and try to turn to Yahweh for help? Yahweh is the only one that can help this situation. Yahweh is the only one that can help the situation in South America. The immigration situation that has got 52,000 immigrant children laying on pads in auditoriums and wherever they could find to put them. They don't know what to do with them. We've written a letter there too. We said we can start training. Our facilities here will handle 400 children a month. Yes. We said we will start training with your agreement, 400 children a month. And then they will be able, after 30 days, with our refresher courses, which we will also furnish them and their teachers, to go back to their country and start building a foundation that will bring peace, where they will want to live there, and so will their neighbors in peace. Yes. This is not a quick fix, but it will start to turn those countries around. Before, they asked Russia for help. If we don't help, if we don't listen to these people now, and we try to shut this up by shutting a gate that anyone can go through or climb over, that's what we've always done. It's like continual war. How has it helped you? It won't help you. Yahweh made man where he can think, and he can figure out how to get across the river. No matter how high the fence is or whatever, these people can think, and they can go under these fences and around your gates. This won't help you a bit. It's like the blind man that's groping in the dark to find a door that's not there. The only thing that's going to help this is to go back and build a foundation in those countries that will be suitable, that will bring forth suitable living. What makes it so harsh right now is exactly what we're seeing in all countries, plus the United States. I was just reading this last week that the city was needing more taxis because they wanted more policemen. More policemen to stop more of the shooting. It's like getting a bigger weapon or teaching your child karate to take care of himself. Karate. A person's got to have the brain capable of a skunk to ever think that would work. Teach your child karate, teach him to fight. You're teaching him to get killed is what you're teaching him to do. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword. Listen to the words of your Savior for the change. Well, that's what we see in all the world. Buy more policemen. Well, the people said no. We've had enough of these raising of taxes, and the policemen are not helping the cause. First sensible thing they put in the paper. Yes, they got in an uproar about it. It said, we're not paying out any more taxes to this stupidity. They didn't put it that bluntly, but anyway, that's the way, from the looks on their face, I think I said it correctly for them. What's behind this whole mess is you're treating people unfairly. You and your unjust judges, your unjust, immoral religions that you're following, and you're praying to the lords, to the evil gods. Read Genesis 3:5. Follow the evil gods, and you'll be like the gods. Well, that's what you're following today. You're praying to gods for rain. You're praying to the lords. You know who the Lord is? You know who the lords are? They're dead rabbis. That's where they came from, Egypt, and before that they were called pharaohs. That's where your word Lord comes from. You're worshiping dead rabbis. Later on they called them saints. When they moved their organization to the 7 hills of Rome, they started calling them saints. And there became so many of them, they had a day for each one of them. You had to worship that saint on that day. Well, pretty soon, all their days was holidays. They couldn't do any work. So they put a Band-Aid over that one right quick and said, well, let's just have one day and call it All Saints' Day. This is the memorials to the dead. You see Isaiah saying, what a stupid mess you're doing here. You're keeping memorials to the dead? The dead know nothing, he said. And you're praying to them? Well, that's what you're doing when you teach your child karate. Teach them to fight to win this war. No one wins the war. Everybody is a loser in war. All you've got is retaliation and more war. That's all you've had. That's what Yahweh told Cain. And for 6,000 years, you have followed this same senseless mess. Well, here in Isaiah now, 59, you're praying for rain. Abelin, you're praying for rain. Well, how much rain? Tell us how much rain the Lord is going to send you. You said He's going to send rain, so give us an inch or two, whatever you say. But tell Him you won't rain without hail this time. Because this is pretty costly. An inch of rain cost us $400 million in Abelin. But I'm sure we can raise some taxes and make up for it. Well, here in Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, this is what Yahweh says to you. Behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened. He can make it rain. He could. But what He's going to do is tell us why the rain is stopped. Why the blessings are stopping. You didn't appreciate your blessings? You went to the Lord for help? Well, He said, cry out to them. In these last days, He said, cry out to your gods. But they can't help you, He said. But go ahead and cry to them anyway. But tell them you want 3 inches of rain this time, or 6 inches of rain. And prove to yourself that your gods and lords are not helping you. Publish it in the newspaper what the Lord is going to do before you asked Him. Publish what you asked for and see if your prayers are answered. Yahweh won't answer them. He set the firmament there to take care of your rainfall. You sinned. You multiplied your sins in this generation, and the multiplication of those sins have went into the heavens, and they have raped every microorganism up there that has to do with your rainfall. They're actually destroying the micro kingdoms that Yahweh set in the firmament to give you rain in the first place. Yahweh did that for mankind, and you have destroyed it through the information coming from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, if you don't know it, sits on 7 hills of Rome. Before they moved to Rome, before they destroyed the temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem, before they destroyed the house of Yahweh, which was your only source of reading of the law, the book of Yahweh was there. Isaiah 34:16, you should get that scripture memorized. That's where it was, in the house of Yahweh, that you changed its name to temple to get rid of the name Yahweh. You were known as the priest of Jerusalem at that time. And you forbid anyone from using the name Yahweh. You cut yourself off from Yahweh, the only one that could help you. You cut yourself off from Him and His laws. Now, breaking His laws, Isaiah 24:1-6 says, is causing this whole thing. It also cuts you off from salvation. Behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy that it cannot hear. But your own iniquities have separated you from your Father, and your own sins have caused Him to hide His face from you, so He will not listen. The gods are not listening either. They're dead. The gods that are in heaven are not listening to you. Their ears are not that smart. They're not that accurate. They can't hear the people from earth. The gods in heaven are busy with their own problems. They're trying desperately through war, just like they're doing here on earth. They're trying desperately to control their wealth that they have. That's all they can think about is their wealth. Well, Yahweh has His face hidden from you because of your iniquities. Iniquity means doing away with the laws of righteousness, or merely ignoring the laws of righteousness, or teaching that the laws of Yahweh are done away with, like all Christians do. They teach that the laws are done away with, now all you have to do is believe. Well, you believed, you all prayed for rain, and you got hail. $400 million in damage of hail. That's what your newspaper said yesterday. $400 million damage. That didn't come because you prayed. Your prayers are not heard. Yahweh said, He says plainly, the gods will not help you. The gods can't help you. They have no power, He said. This is in Isaiah. You really need to read the book of Isaiah. Yahweh is the only power in the universe that could actually stop. He's the only one that's got the wisdom to stop these wars and bring about a peaceful solution. To solve the immigration problem, we could do it. We could start with 400 of these children every month and start feeding them back into the country that they're rejecting now. They could start rebuilding this country. That is, they could rebuild the atmosphere, the morals there, what keeps everyone from enjoying living. They never know whether they're going to be shot to death of a night or not there. In 4 countries there. Some of them have already started joining Russia. Brazil is one of them that started joining, trying to make ties with Russia and China. Your iniquities, verse 2, your iniquities have separated you from Yahweh, so He will not hear you. For your hands are defiled with blood, your fingers, yes, from wars of fighting, and your fingers with iniquity, that's doing away with the laws. Your lips have spoken lies, many lies. Your courts are filled with lies. Your churches are filled with lies. Santa Claus came down the chimney. Is that not a lie? Easter bunnies lay eggs for your children. Is that not a lie? Your whole life is filled with lies. Satan is a liar and the teacher of lies. That's what your Savior said. Your fingers with iniquity, your lips have spoken lies, your tongue has muttered perverseness. Yes, that's what the Pope is spitting out all the time, and the judges are saying, sure, go ahead and kill those babies. Go ahead and kill the babies. Now listen to this one. This was a bright judge that said this one. Well, I can see how pedophilia and incest is okay. Now, it once wasn't, because we know that incest causes HIV. It causes all kinds of sexually transmitted diseases. We know that. That's what the man said, the judge. But now, in this day and time, we have other things to help us. Guess what? Abortion. That's what the idiot said. Go ahead and make these babies that are deformed, you can just go ahead and kill them. It's legal now. So go ahead and have pedophilia. You could go ahead and practice this. That's okay. I'm telling you the words of a judge in this, in Australia. But it's like California, so will go the world. Well, it's got a lot of people upset. I'd think that man's brain was about the size of a mouse. But this was a judge. No justice in the world at all. Abortion will help you. Just go ahead and create these babies and we'll get rid of them. Throw them in the sewer. You know, like they're finding so many babies that the Catholic Church threw in sewers, in septic tanks. Surely you're up on that one. No one calls for justice, nor does any plead for truth. The truth is the law, of course. They trust in vanity, confusion, and speak lies. They conceive mischief and give birth to evil, that is, to the evil gods. Again, I point you back to Genesis 3:5. Do like this, practice sin, and you will know you will be like the gods, evil like the gods. They hatch viper eggs and weave the spider's webs. He who eats their eggs dies, and when one is broken, a viper bursts out. Their webs, he's speaking of disease epidemics, their webs will not serve as clothing, nor will they cover themselves with what they make. Their works are works of iniquity, and the acts of violence is in their hand. That is, more war, more wars. Their feet run to evil. That's again Genesis 3, be like the gods and know evil. And they make haste to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Wasting and destruction are in their paths. More wars, continual war. They do not know the way of peace. Well, of course, that's the reason Yahweh started the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, to bring peace to the world. Not just the world, it's going to the universe next. And there is no judgment in their goings. They have made themselves crooked paths. Whoever walks on them will not know peace. Well, that's what Daniel said too. He said, none of the wicked will understand. None of them. Look back to 13. Isaiah 58:13. Yahweh tells you the first step to take to turn this thing around. This is the very first step. If you will turn your foot from breaking my Sabbath, that is, gather together. Don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together. That's what the world did. They all forsook the Sabbath day, meeting with Yahweh. They forsook that. Daniel 7:25 said the Pope the Catholic Church, the fourth beast, the Roman Empire, that they called the Holy Roman Empire, that they would fight against the Sabbath day and the feast days and think to change these times and laws. If you turn away your foot from breaking my Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy days, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of Yahweh, honorable now, and will honor him by not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor engaging in idle conversation, then you will find your joy in Yahweh. Then you won't have to run from your country. Running from your country into another country doesn't solve it anyway. You see what a mess we're in now. The state of Texas, their security system is going to be broke next month, they said. Going to be out of money because of this mass immigration. It's just trouble. Builds more trouble. That's not the answer. The answer is the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program that will turn it around, the whole thing. You will find your joy in Yahweh, and I will cause you to ride upon the high places. That is, the places that make sense, the joyous places that will make that actually brings about righteousness and in living in peace with one another. The high places of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father. That's the laws of righteousness. Jacob, your father, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. Well, you want peace, you want to turn this around, you want no immigration problems. We got the answers. We have the answers. We're the only ones that have the answers. I've got to give you this one thing here before I quit. This is very important. This is the only light in the world. Think of that. You're the light of the world right now. You're the only light, true light that's going forth to the world. Yisrayl Hawkins backs Barack Obama pleas to let the children come to the U.S. in a newsletter. And the letter was entitled, I think I entitled it, Let the Children Come. That has topped, praise Yahweh, that has topped 122,000 already, newspapers. 122,000. Now, they sent me a branch where the reader of this, the readers, can actually click onto this. Now, this was just put out yesterday. Yes, yesterday. It's up to 122,000 news media is running it already. But they have branches that you can click on. Click on the branch. You know, the branch. Well, this one, when you click on the branch, it gives the people who click this bottom to share their letter on their Facebook pages. When they told me this morning, I said, how many? How many? They said, almost 7,000 have already put this on their Facebook. Praise Yahweh. This letter, let the children come. Don't turn the children down. We can take care of the children. Texas has enough facilities to take care of the children. We can handle 400 a month here in teaching them the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. We can do it. Now, if we have more facilities, if the churches want to give us their facilities to use, which would be a very wise thing, we can handle more than that each month. If the city will give us the auditorium here, that should boost it to a couple of thousand a month. We could soon have the country where they came from filled with teachers covering all of those countries, very soon teaching the way out of this mess that you've got yourselves in. This country, their countries there are wealthy. There's no doubt there's enough wealth there for everyone there. It's just unevenly distributed because of the greed and lust that is going on. That's why the killings are taking place. And the people don't even know if they're going to see the light of day when they go to bed of a night. The same way in South Africa. This is taking place there too. But we've also got a group that's spreading right there like wildfire. And while I'm speaking here, they're teaching the peaceful solution there and got some pretty great followings already. Because Yahweh takes pleasure in His people. Yes, He does. He's going to glorify you like you've never dreamed of the glory Yahweh is going to bring to you. You're going to receive your subconscious minds very soon. You're going to be able to rule the universe, to rule it. But you'll rule it with peace, not with hatred and war like you're seeing here today. You're going to be teaching the peaceful solution. And you'll be governing the world with that peaceful solution. Nothing else. That will guide you throughout all eternity. It will guide the universe. Because Yahweh takes pleasure in His people, He will beautify the meek, humble with salvation. Oh, those are beautiful. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you.